Tov, good vach. Hope you're all doing well. We are up to Chav Daled Amud Aleph, or 24a1, if you're in the article at the top of the second column. Here we go. So, Rav Yirmiyah Mediftei Masna Nekula Hamiyuta Shari. Okay, so we had a statement that we learned yesterday, and the Gemara makes an inference that if this karpiv, the karpiv again is a place that's not inhabitable, and if less than the majority part, so the minority part of the karpiv is planted, then carrying would be permitted. Okay, so hamiyuta shari, meaning if the majority of the karpiv is planted, then it's not going to be usable at all because it's filled with vegetation. But if the minority of the karpiv is filled up, then it's still functional and therefore it's permitted. Amar Rav Huna B'Rei Rav Yeshua. Rav Huna B'Rei Rav Yeshua comes along and qualifies his teaching and says, Lo Amran Ela Beis Asayim, that when the minority is planted, that's only when it's up to Beis Asayim. But if it's more than 2 sa, if it's larger than that space, it's going to be forbidden. Why? So let's just review, because if it's larger than 2 sa, then it is intrinsically a forbidden area. That space of larger than 2 sa becomes a large enough space that it itself becomes forbidden, and that invalidates the whole space, because of a general rule, and this is going to be relevant to all the laws of Eruvin, and that is that if something opens up, if a permitted place opens up to a forbidden place, then the permitted place also becomes asar. Unless there's something blocking them, you can't have, there's a concern obviously, if you have a permitted place and it opens seamlessly into a forbidden place, then it's going to be problematic. So over here, if you have a space of vegetation which is larger than 2 sa, that is intrinsically a forbidden place, and therefore if it's attached, even if it's the minority of the space, in other words, the rest of the space is 5 sa, so it's a minority of the space, but the bottom line is, since it's an intrinsically forbidden space, it's going to be forbidden. If it's a minority space, it's going to be allowed. Now, who does that go like? Kiman Rav Shimon, that goes like Rav Shimon, who we discussed yesterday. Again, Rav Shimon is the one who holds that you could go from one type of domain to another type of domain, even though they are separate domains, right? So he was the one who said that I could go from my rooftop to my courtyard. That is okay. So similarly over here, you have part of the karpef is just empty. Part of it is vegetation. You'd be allowed to go from one to the other. The Chacham would say, no, you can't go from one space to another, and they would invalidate even if it is less 2 sa or less. The Chacham would say it's asr. According to Shimon, it is mutter. Okay, the Gemara continues. Going back to the brisa that we mentioned yesterday. Nita rubo harahu kechatzer mutter. If a person in the karpef, they plant trees, it's like a chatzer. It's like a chatzer in the sense that it's usable space, and therefore it's going to be permitted to use that space. Amar Yehuda Amar Ravimi v'usha sunit dablaos. That is only true if the trees were made in rows. If it's made in rows, you could easily walk through it, and therefore it's permitted. But if it's made, a tree here, a tree there, and it's filled up, then you cannot use that space because it's just not an easy place to use. From Nachman Amar Afpi she'ena sunit dablaos. Even if the trees were not in rows, it's still usable space. At the end of the day, if there are trees there, you can walk under trees, and therefore it's fine. Mar Yehuda, Ikla Levei Rav Huna Bar Yehuda. Mar Yehuda visited the home of Rav Huna, the son of Yehuda. Chazanu lahanud lo avidis tablos. He came to a karpef where there were trees that were planted. They were not in rows. And the people in that city were walking around carrying in that space. Amar Mar Yehuda said to Rav Huna Bar Yehuda. It's the son of Mar Yehuda said to Rav Huna Bar Yehuda, Lo savar lamar laha davimi. Don't you hold the ruling of Avimi who says that only when it's lined up beautifully, that's when it's an easy space to use, but if not, you can't use it. I'm not Rav Nachman severely. I hold like Rav Nachman, and Rav Nachman holds that even if it's not all in order, even if it's not straight trees, it's still a permitted space. Okay. Amar Nachman Amar Shmuel, karpef yosem beis asayim shelo hukaf l'dir. Let's say you have a karpef which is more than 2 beis sa. Okay, again, a large space, and it wasn't originally enclosed for a residential space. Okay, so you have this space which was just empty space. It was sand, right? So just filled with sand, nothing to do over there, right? And it wasn't initially set aside for any residential purpose. And then someone goes ahead and let's go, I'm going with one of the opinions that we saw in the Mishnah. Someone goes ahead and digs a well there. Okay, builds a well there. Okay, so now it has a residential function. So now it's no longer a karpef, right? So now it's going to be something which is going to be a permitted space. So Ketzadu Osa. So what do you do? In other words, you have this space, the sand area, okay, a sandbox, let's call it, okay, and it's surrounded by walls. Okay, so that space is since there's no residential function with sand, therefore it was not a permitted space. Okay, then someone comes along later and puts a well there. They dig a well and there's water there. Fantastic. Now it's a residential purpose. The problem is the walls, when they were originally built, they were not built there for residential purposes. Okay, so what could you do? So my answer is what you do, make a breach in the wall, which is larger than 10 amos, the gojo, and then you fence it in, and then you breach it, and then you build build the wall, you place it back, you build the wall back up, and then it's permitted, right? Because even though you didn't break down all the walls, you just broke down a large enough breach, which invalidates the space by making a larger than 10 amos breach. In other words, normally if you have an Eruv of any sort and it's larger than 10 amos, you have to have something that's going to go ahead and enclose it. So you have a Tzuras HaPesach or something else over here too. You have this walled-in space. The walls were built to surround a space which was not residential. Now became residential, but the walls were already built. So how do you rebuild the walls in a way that surrounds the karpaf in a way that's for residential purposes? Once the well was built, break down one of the walls where it's now larger than 10 amos, and then rebuild the wall. Fantastic. Ibai, the Gemara asks, okay, paratz amma v'gadar amma, paratz amma v'gadra. Let's say the person says, I don't want to knock down a 10 amma breach in the wall. Maybe I'll just give a practical purpose for security purposes. I don't want to have a huge breach. So instead, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to make 1 amma breach, okay? And then I'm going to fix it up. And then I'm going to go 1 amma breach, and I'm going to fix it up. And a 1 amma breach, and I'm going to fix it up. Actually, until the person goes ahead and breached more than 10 amos, and rebuilt it, right? We didn't do it all at once. We did 1 amma, breach, fix, breach, fix, breach, fix, breach, fix. So now the person ended up breaching more than 10 amos. Does that work? Is this not the same as the following halacha? Kol klei balibatim. This should sound familiar. This came up in Masechah Shabbos. Kol klei balibatim shiur krimonim. The measure of all homeowners' utensils to lose its status of tuma is the size of a pomegranate. Okay? Ubai Chizkiah asked the following question. Nikav kamotzi zayis ustamo. Okay, so again, if you have like a pot, and the pot has a little hole, maybe the pot's not a good example, but let's say you have a basket, and the basket has a small hole, it's still a functional basket, you can use the basket for books, okay? But let's say it has a hole the size of a pomegranate, you're done, okay? But once it's done, once it's no longer considered a functional basket, then it loses its status of being tameh. So let's say it doesn't have, you don't cut a hole, it doesn't have a hole the size of a remote of a pomegranate, rather a hole the size of an olive was made, and then the person sewed it up, okay? Nikav kamotzi zayis ustama, then the person sealed it. Chaz nikav kamotzi zayis ustama, then they made a hole the size of an olive, then they sealed it. And then finally, after a bunch of those holes, it in totality had a hole at different times that equaled more than a pomegranate. Would that work? So the Gemara says, Amar la Rav Yochanan. Rav Yochanan answered this question. When Chizkiah asked the question, Rav Yochanan said to Chizkiah, Rabbi Shanis alanu. Rabbi Yochanan said back to his Rebbe, Chizkiah, he said, my teacher, you taught us the following Mishnah. Okay, the following Mishnah, which should be able to answer the question. Sandal shenifska achas mi'azna v'tigna. Okay, a sandal. So what's a sandal? Sandal is like the bottom part of it, and then you have one thing on this side and one thing on that side, right? So basically, it has like an ear on each side. That's okay. This is not working. This is where I need my whiteboard. Okay, bottom line is you have the flat thing where you put your foot on, and then you have 2 ropes basically on each side which hold the foot in. Okay, so let's say now if the straps break off, it's not really going to be functional. So sandal shnifska achas me'azam v'tigna. Let's say one ear broke off and then the person repaired it. Okay, tamei midras. It still maintains its tuma because even though it has only one strap, you can still pull that strap. You can still use it. However, nifska shnia v'tigna. If the second ear broke off, tamei midras about tamei maglo midras. Okay, it still maintains some level of tuma. I'm not going to get into that, but it does lose its significant tuma called tumas midras. Tumas midras is like something which you're resting upon. So it loses that status once it loses both ears. Okay. Now, I think I missed a line. Yeah, I said it wrong. Person, one ear breaks off and then the person fixes it, right? So again, one ear breaks off and then the person fixes that ear, it still maintains its tumah. And then the second ear falls off and the person fixes it, then it loses its status of tumah. It's no longer considered tameh. The Gemara asks, why is it that after one ear breaks and that it maintains its status of tameh? So answer the Gemara, because the second ear is still intact. Shnia nami hakaimer rishona. But when I have the second ear, the first ear is intact. Right? At the end of the day, what's going on? I lose the first ear, and we say, why is the sandal still tameh? Because the second ear is there. Fine. And then I fix the first one, and then I break off the second one, right? And we say, why is it? And then now I fix the second one. And, it's a whole new utensil. It loses its status of tumah. Why? At the end of the day, what's the difference between first or second in both cases? You fixed it. You took off the first one, and you fixed it. Took off the second one, you fixed it. What's the difference? Gemara says, when the second ear breaks off, the first ear is still intact, so the sandal is still usable. Why does it lose its status? Allah, you said to this, panim chadashos va'olakan, a quote unquote new face has come here. It's brand new. Granted, at no time was it missing 2 ears. 2 straps, but at the end of the day, it is a brand new sandal. At the end of the day, and therefore it no longer has its original tumah because it's a brand new sandal. Okay, granted, the bottom part, the sole, that's the word I was looking for, the sole is still there, but the ears, the flaps, the things on the side, those are brand new. That's a major part of the sandal, and therefore it's brand new. So, and therefore he says in Hachinami, and it'd be the same thing, Hachinami Panam Chadashis Balakan, when it comes to the basket, since it lost the size of a pomegranate, right? And then you had the olive, because you had the olive size was lost, you fixed the olive size was fixed. At the end of the day, there is a full pomegranate size which was lost and then replaced. Therefore, Panam Chadash Lakan, it's a brand new thing, and that's going to be true here as well, right? Because we were asking, what about this fence? You do one, instead of just breaking more than 10 amos and then rebuilding it, you do one amma rebuild, one amma rebuild, one amma rebuild, one amma rebuild. At the end of the day, that same concept of Panam Chadash, it's a brand new wall. It didn't happen all at the same time. Panam Chadash Lakan, it is going to be okay. Karela, it's new, okay, in the sense that it's a brand new wall, and therefore halachically has the status of being re-walled for the sake of this residential function, i.e. the well that we use. Fine. Karela, Rav Yochanan said about his, Rav Chizkiah said about his student, Leis Dain Bar Inish. This is no mere mortal, right? He said about his student, Rav Yochanan ended up being like one of the leading scholars. His teacher Chizkiah commented when he made these connections, said, wow, there's no one like this person. He's like angelic. Ika de Amri Kigon Dain Barnash. Alternatively said, this is what a person should be, right? Which is in some ways a bigger critique on everyone else. One is saying he's like above other people. The other is like, why is everyone else not like this, right? So, okay. Either way, he was complimenting him. And the bottom line is, if you break one amma worth of the wall, then you fix it one amma, fix it one amma, fix it more than 10 amos, it is a new wall. Amr Kana. Okay. You have Rechava Shachori Abatim. Let's say you have a back lot behind the houses. Okay, so typically these back lots, they would have no residential function. People would not use them for any residential purpose, and they wouldn't be attached to houses. Typically, it's hard, I can't think of a good example of this. Nowadays, we always would have like a back door going into a lot, but it's, imagine you had a backyard, or a backyard in like a courtyard that there was no opening to it. Okay? Fine, that was the space. So we treat it like a carmelis. So we would only be able to carry within 4 amos. That's the halacha. If you have something like a public domain, people don't know this. We typically don't share this because it's not like good practice. But if you were in a public domain and you put something on the floor, you'd be able to pick it up and walk within 4 amos and put it down within that 4 amos, certainly for a carmelis as well. So basically it's saying there's no way of fixing this. It's basically a public domain. That's what it means, okay? If a person opens a doorway to it, you're allowed to carry in the whole thing. Okay, a door meaning from your house into that space. Okay, then you're allowed to carry into Pesach Matiro. The entrance makes it mutter. But that's only true if first you made the door and then you built the back lot. Okay, aval hukav v'sof pasach lo. But if the back lot was enclosed first, let's say you first had that back lot, and then the guy says, you know what, I really want to use this back lot. So they break open the back wall of their house, and they make a little door, and now they get into the back lot. Then lo, that doesn't work because the walls, again, and it's the same thing as we saw before. The walls were originally built for a non-permissible space. You can't go ahead and undo that, okay? So Gemara says, Pasach b'sof hukaf pshita. So what's the novelty then of this teaching? Why is Rav Nachman teach me that if a person goes ahead and before they build the back lot, there's nothing there, just a backyard, but it's not fenced in. And the person makes a door in their house, and they put a door, and then they go ahead and they build this back lot. You're allowed to carry in there. The Gemara says, of course, it's obvious. Of course, you can't. The Gemara says, there's a granary behind the house. You may have thought that the intent the reason that the person opened the entrance is to get to the granary that is through the back lot. In other words, the back lot, you may say, is just batal. I don't care about the back lot. I just want to get to the granary, and that's why I built that door. So Gemara says, Kamash Malan, no, at the end of the day, we could assume that once the person made a door into that back lot, it's now attached to the house, and therefore we treat it as a full-fledged therefore it's now a residential function. It opens up into a house, and therefore it is going to be a permitted space that a person could use. Okay, we'll stop over here. Have a great day.